We're back for another episode of Hard Money Monday. This time we got Bennett Andrews, local legend, joining us for the show. Bennett, I promised you that I was going to tell you a story. This is actually how I first heard your name.
Okay.
And we'll get you a live reaction. So this summer, I'm somebody hits me up. Somebody I've done like a few deals with. They're like, "Hey man, you follow this guy on Instagram? Like, do you know this Bennett Andrews guy?" I was like, "No, I don't think I've ever talked to him. It's just a lead, probably. Whatever." Like, why? What's up? I'm like, "Oh man, we have this deal under contract. He's also under contract with it. We don't know what's up with it." I was like, "Oh, yeah, I can't really help you." A couple days later, somebody else that I know hits me up. He's like, "Hey man, I've got this deal under contract. There's two other people holding contract on it. Do you know Bennett?" And I'm like, "No, dude. Apparently I should." And that's how I first knew about you. And then you joined EIMG like a month later, and I was like, "Man, I don't know about this guy. Like, we'll see what's up." But to tie it back into our show, I figured out really quickly. I was like, "All right, yeah, this dude is a winner. Just like instantly doing deals, helping other people out." So that's my long-winded intro for how I got to know you. So welcome in, man.
Well, thanks, dude. I appreciate you having me. That's a funny story to back it up. I have a question. Was that from Adam Whitney?
Yeah.
So it's so funny. So he and I met in person for the first time a few months ago, and that was the first story he shared with me too. And we had similar experiences with that seller who ended up taking everyone for a ride. The guy had no real claim to title in the end, and of course demanded some sort of cash EMD to be delivered to him in person at his house. This guy was collecting cash EMDs and made out with $2,000 from all of us collectively. So,
oh dang, he actually.
Yeah. Which is funny because it's like, I know better. I'm sure Adam knows better. I'm sure whoever else you were talking to knows better too, right?
But Robert Portes was the other guy in on that, and also like experienced wholesaler, experienced fix and flipper, right?
Yep. Yeah. That was right in our backyard too, here in St. Pete. So it's funny. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here and talk about mindset. And this is actually, I've only been on 2 or 3 podcasts before, so this is kind of a fun new thing for me.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to have you, man. I guess let's just kick it back to the beginning. Like, when would you say you first, I don't know, could call yourself a winner or like really started to develop that mentality or that mindset?
Sure.
What's the origin story here?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, just to start, I think that mindset is the basis for everything, and not just what goes into becoming a good business leader, but also just what it makes you a good person, right?
Yeah.
And so the way I've always looked at it is mindset is that first domino in the line of the domino effect to get the results that you want. So you change your mindset, you change your habits, and then you change the actual results and get the outcomes that you want, right? Yeah. So, honestly, the first thing that I think of when you ask me that question, like take us all the way back, I'm going to take you way, way back to when I was in elementary school. So I was a chubby little kid, and my nickname from all the kids in like 2nd grade or 3rd grade for me was Bennigan, even though my name's Bennett. And I don't know if you're familiar. Bennigan's was a family chain restaurant at the time. And so that was kind of the, I don't know if it was a term of endearment, but that was what my nickname was. And I hated it, obviously, right? We all get teased.
Yeah, of course.
And so, and I ate healthy, like, for a kid, I wasn't like counting calories, but like, I wasn't like going to McDonald's every day or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, I was so frustrated by it and wanted to get, just into shape. So every night after my parents would tuck me in and send me to bed, I would wake up and start doing push-ups and sit-ups. And then I'd go back to sleep. And then as I grew a little bit older, I would get home from school and immediately get out of the car, put on my running shoes and go run a mile. And I would do that literally for years. I did that from like elementary school up until I got into middle school. And then by the time that I got into 7th or 8th grade, I went to a private school that went from K through 12th grade. I was running track for the high school varsity team. And by the time I was in high school, I was running like a 450 mile. And so it just like ingrained in me part of that mindset of like what it takes to actually achieve what you want, right? Yeah. And having that mindset of the opposite of the victim mindset. It's like, yeah, rather than blaming something else or being like, oh, I have genetics, or, oh, well, I don't have time to do this. It's like, even at the age of like 10, I found a way to make time for it, you know? Yeah. So,
shoot, dude, anyway. You're probably a busy 10-year-old too.
Maybe, yeah.
I guess, how would you even define mindset? Like, what does that mean to you?
I think that's a great question. I think mindset is the inner mantra. So it does tie back to core values. Yeah. And it's interesting actually for our company, outwork and growth mindset are both two of our core values. Yeah. So it's something that we live, not just individually, but collectively as a company too.
Yeah. I think it really comes down to how you process information and interpret the world. Like, it's literally, the world is what it is.
Yep.
How we perceive it and how we choose to generate thoughts from what comes into, what we see, what we hear, everything like that, how we generate thoughts, beliefs, actions from it. That's kind of what I think of when I think of mindset, right? Yeah. Which makes sense. That's the place where it all begins, because I can give you the same exact information, put you in the exact same scenario, same childhood, same everything, and put someone else in there who just interprets information differently, and the results, action, the responses is just going to be completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, thank you. How does somebody actually develop that, and how do you improve upon that? How do you change that, dude? That's tough. We're talking about like core values, identity.
Yep.
Where does someone even start?
So I think that when it comes to developing a growth mindset or a winning mindset, you really have 3 different steps along the way. And I think the very first one is being honest with yourself about where you are, right? And that's, it's not a novel concept. This is well recognized. You walk into an AA meeting, the first thing someone says is, my name is XYZ and I'm an alcoholic. Like, they immediately take accountability. And for some people, that's a very enlightening moment to say that out loud, right? But obviously it's applicable to so many different people and scenarios, right? It's not just, it doesn't need to just be an AA. It could be, I have a problem because whatever, overeating, or I'm working out, or I'm not getting the leads that I want, or whatever. Right. Yeah. And taking, that statement and holding yourself accountable, it's basically acknowledging, I'm not making excuses for this anymore, because you can make excuses for everything. I mean, we have endless ways to make excuses, right? Yeah. And then I think it's also, the second one is being honest about your goals. And I think that that's important, because some people are scared to actually admit to themselves what their goals are, because they seem so far away, right? And I know that, I've been there before when I was younger, and the idea of, whatever it is, trying to get 100 doors or hitting a certain number in bottom line or anything like that. You're just like, I don't even want to say that out loud because I don't want people to laugh at me. Right. Yeah. But once you admit that to yourself and you start actually believing it, and you can visualize that and you start to see it, I think that's a huge part of it. And then, of course, I think that the third one is being honest with yourself about whether or not you're willing to make the hard decisions to get there. And I think that one of those 3 is probably the one that stops people in their tracks the most, because most people are able to say, I'll admit to myself where I am, I'll admit to myself where I want to go, but I'm not willing to make the changes in my life to get there. And I'm sure you and I read some of the similar books, or have read them. And Atomic Habits talks about that, and I think that's a great book. And I remember there's one thing they describe, and it was, if you're trying to cut down on watching TV, are you willing to take the TV and unplug it and put it in the closet? You know what I mean? Like, making it hard for yourself to actually do the action that is holding you back, right?
Yeah.
So
one of the things for me that I think has always been huge is, this is actually something I picked up from Bigger Pockets, like way back in the day when Brandon Turner was still on the podcast. But he was like, to become you have to be able to trust yourself. And that starts with when you tell yourself something or you make a commitment to yourself, you do it. And like
Yes.
even the smallest things. So like for me, one of the things I think about is like, dude, I started this podcast, Hard Money Monday, before I ever did a loan. Um, I'd never like gone live or anything, dude. It was like this show was brutally bad. And I'm not gonna say it's like the best thing ever now. There's a lot of things that could be better, right? But dude, I remember people asking me about loans, and I was like, dude, I don't know. But I was like, hey, I'm just gonna commit to it. I know if I just keep doing this, it won't get worse. I
Right.
know that, and like
Right.
it's free. It's like, well, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? But I think of the difference of if I would have done this for 1 month and then been like, you know, like listen to the negative feedback loop in your mind where it's like, hey, nobody's gonna listen anyways. You know, you're not really that good at this. You're not this, you're not that. Like just don't bother. Like it's fine. Versus like, no. I know if I just keep doing the inputs, I believe that I'll get better. And just as importantly, if not more important, I'm keeping a promise to myself. And I
Yeah.
think that's like how you build up confidence in who you are.
Dude, I agree completely. I think that really resonates with me. I have a little internal voice that I tell myself, you know, we all have those little things we repeat to ourselves. And it sounds really, really funny, but it just, I tell myself, just give a shit. And it's for little things, just to like around the house, right? Like you walk by, there's something on the counter and you walk past it and you know, you should put it away. And it's like, dude, just give a shit. Just take care of it. It takes you 2 seconds. You know what I mean? But to your point too, going back to starting this podcast and being vulnerable, right? And recognizing that you're going to put yourself into a situation that's uncomfortable, but the best growth comes from periods of uncertainty and discomfort, right? And it sounds cliche, but as long as you keep falling forward, you're making progress. Right? And you know, life is not a destination. It's a journey. We don't get to the top of the mountain and die. You get to the top of the mountain and you either go back down the other side or go back or whatever way of that metaphor you want to run with it. But you need to keep making progress, right? And we can only do that by committing ourselves to personal growth and development. And I really believe that is our purpose collectively of all being here is to attain our highest possible level of ourselves and that personal growth. And I think when you take that approach, it really gives you a lot of purpose in life, you know, and that's really important, you know, I mean, for why we're here and, you know, beyond just business, right? I mean, like how do we leave a positive impact on the world someday?
That and just becoming the best version of yourself, which I think is when you talk to people who have like, okay, for instance, let's compare, you know, where you're at versus where I'm at, right? Like you've gotten to the place that I think a lot of people are like, oh, Bennett's like, dude, he can just chill on the beach all day. He doesn't need to do anything. Like he's made it. He's made it. I'm in a position where like, you know, I'm up and coming. I'm figuring things out, right? Like I'm striving.
Dude, you're making a name for yourself, by the way. Don't cut yourself short there.
I appreciate it. I'm up and coming. But what I think a lot of people miss out on when they look at people are like, oh man, like they've established, like, why do they keep going? Why do they keep going with their business? Like, if I was there, I wouldn't do that. Like, no, I don't think that's true because in order to get there, you need to be the type of person that's trying to become the best version of yourself. And to your point, that is a lifelong journey. Like that's your purpose, that's your fulfillment. Like a lot of people that I've found who have made it pretty far in business, like it's not about the money, it's not about the income. It's literally about like, how can I be better? How can I help more people? How can I like literally make this business the best version of itself? Make my family the best version of my family. And I think that's the kind of fuel that really like, if you want to talk about a winning mindset and a winning life, it's not just about, you know, growing for the sake of, you know, more revenue. It's growing for the sake of trying to reach your highest purpose, right?
Yeah, that's so true. I always look at it this way where we're in real estate / finance, right?
Yep.
And it's undeniable that there's a scorecard and the money you make is somehow tied to that, right? But I think that the overall goal and this is me observing people far more successful than I am, to get to that level of of wealth or just financial comfort so that they can really go and pursue whatever it is in life, not just business, but beyond business. They want to pursue that in life and just have the financial comfort so they don't need to think about it anymore, and use that as a tool to maybe achieve what it is that they're trying to do.
For sure. So Bennett, let's rewind just your early days when you're getting started in real estate. How was it that, let's be real. A lot of the people that watch the show are trying to get into some of their first deals or early on. Dude, It's scary. I lost money on my first flip. You're first getting into it. It seems like there's a lot more that you don't know than you do, because that's true.
Yep.
Like when you first got started, how were you able to approach real estate to be able to find success? Did you have fails early on? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I got into the St. Pete market here. I started working for my father-in-law in 2011, and then
terrible time to get in.
Well, in retrospect, it made a lot of sense. But at that time, when we started buying rental properties, the uncertainty was, has the market actually hit the bottom yet?
Yeah.
It was like, has the bottom fallen out, or are we buying this? Or are we trying to catch a falling knife? Right. And so the one thing we went after was just really solid cash flow. We were like, well, even if the property value goes down, at this point, it doesn't really matter because we're still making cash flow off of it.
Yeah.
So, and we knew it would come back, or at least that's what my father-in-law told me.
Right. Yeah. I knew through him it would come back.
Yeah. But someone who's been through multiple market cycles, and I hadn't been through anything yet. But
right. I haven't been through my first deal yet.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, mistakes that I made, I made all the typical ones. I hired the cheapest labor, which were just a bunch of crackheads, to come and lay tile, and got my tools stolen. And, you learn that cheap is not always the best option. Sometimes you got to pay a little bit for quality.
See that one again for the people in back. Cheap is usually expensive, man.
That's right. That's exactly, dude. You said it. But yeah, I was fortunate too, because a lot of my mistakes were covered up by appreciation over the past, whatever it's been, almost 15 years now. So
yeah, that's awesome. What about today, man? Like, I know what you and John are kind of doing at a high level, but I honestly don't know like what exactly your business looks like, where you guys are trying to take it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that. We love it.
Yeah.
So, we adapt to the market, whatever it's presented us with. So in the past, we had done a considerable amount of wholesaling, especially when the institutional buyers were heavily into the market. So we're talking a few years ago, rates are super low. So all these institutional buyers basically have free money, and they're buying, they're entering the single family rental market for the first time. And we were very fortunate to time that really well. Yeah. And we also were well capitalized, so we could go into certain neighborhoods where they like to buy, all over the state, by the way. I mean, we scaled as quickly as we could to serve any market they were buying in the state of Florida. And I even got my broker's license in Georgia, anticipating we were going to move into that market, which is a whole nother story. But we were doing a lot of that at the time. And then obviously once rates went up, they disappeared from the market, right? Yeah. Like just overnight, pretty much gone. Yeah. So we switched back to working primarily with private investors. But the appetite, I think, that private investors had also wasn't as robust, just because prices weren't trending as quickly upwards as we saw, right? Yeah. They were starting to stabilize. And what's that?
You're talking just like your everyday Joe Schmo fix and flipper locally?
Exactly. Yeah. So there was a lot of confidence in the market, call it like 3.5 years ago, right? That people were probably getting a little overzealous even in some points. But it made it so it was easy to wholesale, right? I mean, that was like the era of the wholesaler. So we took advantage of that market when it presented itself. And then as it went away, we recognized that in order to maintain the spreads that we were looking at and to continue growth, we needed to take up a larger part of that supply chain. So we kind of saw it as, we're point A in the supply chain, and then it moves down to the investor and then to the end buyer. So we're like, we got to take up the first 2 points of that supply chain now. So we need to be both the the supplier, the wholesaler. We also need to be the flipper doing the work in order to capitalize on the true value of that asset. So so we've pivoted quite a bit that way. Our goal this year is to do 60 sale transactions between our wholesale and flip side, heavily favored to the flips. That's where we do our main focus.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. And I did want to ask you about this too, because I know you guys are doing pretty good volume on the fix and flip side. I've talked to, I talk to fix and flippers every day. I guess that's everybody I talk to. But I've got a project going as well, not listed yet. But
you're doing it with Bell Style Design, right? Nikki and Chet. Yeah, we use Nikki too. They're great.
Oh, do you? Oh, yeah. Nice. Well, it's like, I guess everybody who's a baller does. I was like,
there you go.
Like, hey, I'm gonna be your client that does like one deal, maybe 2 a year, but I'm happy about it.
But they should put that on their business card. You just gave them a whole quotable right there.
Dude, I literally I've gone through that project 3 times. One time was to shoot content, one time was to show my girlfriend, and one time was before we closed. I haven't been there in like over a month.
That's their value proposition, right?
Dude, so worth it. It's easily going to be the best comp in the neighborhood as far as like appearance and everything too. So shout out to Shasteen and Nikki for sure. Yep. But I am curious. So I hear conflicting things. Like, you got your perspective. You're like, hey, look, this is not prior to 2022. And by the way, I moved to Tampa May 2022 to start wholesaling. So I definitely felt that I didn't even know what I was doing yet. But I've heard one side of the coin where it's like, hey, look, things are tighter. It makes more sense if we just control this top to bottom. You're not going to lose out on deals because you have idiot buyers that blow things up, or they bring in some lender that doesn't know what they're doing, or they, whatever. I just want to control the deal top to bottom, and we'll make it work because we're going to fix and flip it. Then I hear other people, even people in EIMG, that are like, hey, I used to flip most of my deals, but dude, this stuff is sitting on the market. Like, nah, I'm out, dude. My highest annualized return, lowest risk, just take a 5, 10, maybe 15K assignment fee and move on. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, anytime we get a property in that is direct to seller, so it's through our marketing channels, sure. And I clarify that because our value proposition to agents is, if they bring us a deal before it hits the market and gets listed, we defer any commission in the acquisition, and then after we do the renovation, we give them that listing as a thank you.
Okay.
So we have an obligation from them from the beginning to go forward and flip that property, right?
Got it.
Understood. So that's why I'm clarifying that versus our own internal marketing, which we do a lot of that. So we're probably right now about 60-40, 60 coming from our direct to seller leads, 40 coming from agents and wholesalers. But yeah, I mean, so anything that comes in that way, we're obviously going to put it out there. And we are not, I don't classify us strictly as a flipper, right? Yeah. We're real estate investors. So with any deal, we're going to analyze every exit strategy that we have at our disposal, and then assess the risk and the reward and determine which exit strategy we think makes the most sense. And sometimes we don't control that, right? Sometimes it's the buyer demand that controls it one way or the other.
Yep.
So, that certainly makes a lot of sense. Yeah. If there's one that we're looking at, hey, we can make 20 on this on an assignment, or we can 6 months from now make 25. I think which way we're going to go, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Especially if you can do an assignment, because it's like, oh, we're not risking any capital. Yeah, that's the way to do it, right?
Dude, but for sure.
Yeah, but for us, in order to hit the numbers that we're looking at for this year, we need to use both strategies. So we need to be flipping and we need to be wholesaling to make that work.
When does something cross your desk where, like, let's just leave aside the agent brings me a deal.
Yeah.
Our obligation is to make sure that they get a listing out of it as a thank you. That aside, deal crosses your desk. What's the biggest thing for you outside of just, pure, I could make 20 on an assignment versus 25 on a flip? What are some telltale signs? It's like, this is going to be when we flip versus this is when we assign. Is it mostly like, oh, we've got our crews right here, we like to do projects right here? What are the biggest factors in that regard?
Sure. I think we certainly have a bias towards St. Pete properties because
Sure.
we're local here. So I would say in this specific market, if we look at it and we know the geography of St. Pete much better than any other market in the area. And I like
Sure.
to think that we know it better than a lot of other investors in the area here
Right.
too. To the point where we can go into a neighborhood. I'm going to use Childs Park in South St. Pete because that was where I bought my first rental. I know it very, very well. And, so I know going into that neighborhood, what we can buy for, what the buyer audience is looking like and what they demand and what we can exit for. And we would probably take a risk in there that someone else wouldn't because we feel comfortable in that market, you know? So geography would be one thing, but also, ease and speed of the actual flip. Because as you know very well from hard money, time is money, right?
Yeah.
And of course, on the investor side for us, that's a huge part. We use a lot of lines of credit to fund our flip business. So it literally costs us the longer that we have it on the market. So we go in and we see a really clean shell, I should say, not a clean house, but something that we're not going to need to do any extensive improvements like moving, walls around significantly or anything like that. It's literally just a really nice cosmetic flip. There's probably an opportunity for us to create more equity with that in the property than it would be to assign it as is.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly the deal that I bought with Jordan. That was exactly why, man. Already passed a couple 4 points.
Yeah.
Great comps. I mean, we moved the kitchen around and stuff like that, but there was no need to pull any permits. Like, I'm not doing the crap where you add a bathroom or you need to get architects involved. Like, no way. I think I really liked what you said earlier about, like, dude, we're not flippers, we're real estate investors. We're going to listen to what the market tells us, and that's how we're going to respond. Like, our identity is not caught up in a strategy. Our identity is we're going to give the market whatever the market tells us. And I think that a rookie move for a lot of people is just looking at bottom line. Hey, profit strategy A, profit strategy B. Whereas an intelligent investor looks, okay, I really care about my annualized return and my risk. And I think those are the factors. There's somebody who's like, this person's going to last, this person's going to do well. They care a lot about those two metrics as opposed to like, I can make 30 grand more flipping. It's like, yeah, over 6 more months.
Right. Yeah, it's a very important point. Yep.
Yeah.
You're taking on that much more risk, right?
Exactly. Yep. That and personally guaranteeing debt, dude, that's all fun and games until the market changes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So,
All of a sudden, the signature starts to make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're coming up on time, man. So let's just leave it with this because I know the main focal point of this pod was talking about developing the winning mindset. What piece of advice would you have for anyone who's tuned in right now about whether it be like something you could implement on a daily basis or one just general takeaway on developing the winning mindset and keeping that mindset?
Sure. From my own personal experience, getting up early is one of the best things you can do to start being proactive in developing a growth mindset. In addition to the 3 things that I said before, being honest with yourself about where you are, where you want to go, and whether or not you're willing to make the hard decisions to get there. But man, waking up early just puts you at an advantage over the rest of the world to start your day. And I am a big believer in that. And we try to ingrain it into our company culture. I wake up every morning between 4:30 and 5:30, and I do my daily gratitude. I write down something from the day before that I'm proud of to hold myself accountable for who I was the day before. And then I write down my 3 non-negotiables. And those are things outside of my normal to-do list that I need to get done by the end of the day. If I'm laying in bed, if I'm laying in bed at 8:30 at night, I'm an early to bed, early riser. But
I hear you.
But if I'm laying in bed and I realize I didn't do it, I got to get out of bed and make sure I get that done. And, those are the things. And it doesn't need to be this crazy, huge task, but it needs to be something that's outside of your normal to-do list to get you 3 steps ahead of where you were from the day before. So
Yeah, I love that, man. That's right in line with the you make promises to yourself, you keep them.
Yep. Well said.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man. This was an awesome show. So glad to have you on. And
Thanks
I'm
for
sure we're going to do something together before the year is done. We'll get mixed up in a transaction in one way or another, I'm sure.
Well, good. We'd love to have you, involved in maybe one of the deals that we assign. That'd be awesome.
Cool. Sounds good, man. Well, we're peacing out. Thank you guys all for tuning in to this week's episode of Hard Money Monday.